mean, that's like 60% of the reason I bring you. I'm not caring. I'm not really worried about it. People will show up.
And if they don't, oh well.
And if they don't,
You can just sing for us.
yeah, right. We'll just like have a sing along. That's really the issue. We'll just listen to some music.
Yeah, we do that actually.
This is like slow jam, you know.
No, it's a learning place. Now you're here.
I'll take it from there. I have deceived you. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and get started, and we'll see what happens. This will be real interesting when we get to the part where like there's just volunteer, because it's gonna be just us talking to each other. Which is gonna be like a little more awkward than typical, but like still within acceptable parameters of awkward. So, you know, we'll see what happens. All right, so this is the panel. We're going to try to solve an age-old question for anime fans, where like, how do you talk to people about the thing you like without actually screwing it up horribly? Because as someone who's liked anime for a very long time, it's extremely hard to not go the exact wrong direction with like the first sentence, right? Like the old joke is like, how to tell your friend about this anime? Just don't, right? Because like, you can't open with anything that's actually going to be effective, right? But first I'll go a little bit about sort of who I am, why I'm here, why this panel. So my name is Will. I'm a PhD student at Texas Women's University in Denton. I've got a master's in counseling. I'm working on my dissertation. So at some point I will like beg you to take my dissertation thing. I have business cards that like, you'll go to the website and you can take my dissertation once it's approved. That would help, but I'll beg you later. As part of my role as a student, I teach undergrad classes, so I'm used to big empty rooms of bored people. I also work as a therapist. I do a lot of other weird things here and there, including this, which is, I found out that they give you free passes to anime conventions and they do panels. So that's why I'm here. My primary research interest is in social isolation. So I research hikikomori, which is a topic that is sort of anime adjacent. It's something you see in anime. There are characters that are hikikomori in anime. So functionally, TWU might actually give me a PhD in something that's anime related, which seems like a poor decision on their part, but it seems like a great decision on my part. I also do a little bit of other outside things, like I consult for an esports team, an Overwatch team, a college Overwatch team. I also run a D&D therapy group for people that are looking to learn social skills and learn more about themselves and stuff. And this is sort of the smattering of stuff that I do. If that's something that's interesting to anyone, I have cards and all that. You can have ways to get in touch with me, so it's not a mystery like you'd like look me up on like Facebook or like LinkedIn or something later, which would be effective but weird. And things I've done like a lot of research stuff. I'm in the process of doing my dissertation. But I also used to be a drug counselor at a high school anti-drug program, which was a lot of fun. It was challenging because like, imagine like that one person you know that has that problem, but like they're also 17 and just don't care about anything. It was colorful at times. So that's the fun part. I don't do it anymore, which thank goodness, right? Just college students, and it like doesn't matter what they do because like as long as they're doing it in the classroom, I don't have to worry about it anymore. And in terms of anime and manga and stuff, here's a smattering of things that I enjoy. My favorite series include Evangelion, which is now on Netflix, so no one has an excuse not to watch it anymore. I know it's new dub, people are salty about it, but like, it exists, you can purchase it. Everyone has a Netflix subscription, you don't have an excuse. Also G Gundam, which is the greatest show that ever was created by God. And I say God because there's a horse that pilots a horse Gundam in the show. That's an actual plot point, I wish I was making it up. There's a guy who fights in his giant robot wearing a zebra costume because he represents like Africa or something, and the most African thing they could think of was a zebra costume. It's a colorful show. I also like classics, Cowboy Bebop, which hopefully people in this room are like, oh, Cowboy Bebop, I know what that is. Because the one I did yesterday, people were like, I haven't watched anything older than Inuyasha. I was like, oh, buddy. I get that you're like 11, but like, yeah. And also, since it's my panel, you can't tell me that my anime taste is terrible, even if it is. Because that's how this works. So, why do this, right? So this is the big question. And one of the things I try to do is try to make this as accessible for what people want. right? Because like, I could just do the same thing every year and like, no one would care, but that gets kind of boring and like, I want people to actually show up at some point. And so one of the things, the last panel I went to, a parent came to me and said, you know, a parent was sitting on a panel and said, like, how do I talk to my child about what they like, right? Because they were at the anime convention, like, I think they were by themselves, right? Like, their kid wasn't there, and they're like, how do I talk to my kid about what they like? Because I'm concerned about it, but like, I want to be interested, I want to be a good parent. And for a lot of people in that room that weren't even parents, were sitting there like, man, I wish my parent like cared half as much as this person does, right? And I'm definitely not the only person that had the childhood or adolescent experience of like, man, I really like this thing, and like my parents or guardians have no idea what it is or what I'm talking about, right? They like dump you off at the corner of the anime convention and they just leave you for like 8 hours, and then they'll come pick you up, and then like on the way they're gonna comment about the people in the costumes, and you're just gonna be like, oh, dad, right? We've all been there. Maybe it was mom for you, maybe it was grandma, but like same difference, right? Although I can't be the only person that was like, I like anime, and they're like, oh, that's those Chinese cartoons, right? And you're like, dang it, hey, I'm good. I was like, dang it, like, this isn't gonna go anywhere because I can't unexplain to you that it's Chinese cartoons, right? So we're gonna try to make that work. And yeah, I know, you've all had this experience, right? Especially if you're a certain generation where like, your only opportunity to watch anime was if it was on Tech TV at 10 p.m. at night, or it was on Toonami, which like briefly stopped existing and then continued to exist. It was a rough time for everyone, I know. But now there's like streaming services, and it's on Netflix, and like, I don't know, maybe you're a Netflix queue, and you're like, what are you watching? This looks weird, and you're like, it is, but like, let me talk to you about it first, right? So that's sort of the why of this. And, you know, I fully expect that this is gonna be, you know, stuff that maybe people already know, or things that you've heard before, but we're trying to put it together in a way that's meaningful, that we can actually have these conversations, right? Because one of the things that's important to me is like, how do we make this easier? How do we make people have a better conversation about this, right? So things we're gonna go over today, we're gonna talk about research on communication. So this is gonna be me as in my capacity as a psychology person, being like, here's what psychology says about communication, right? Some of this is going to be real basic stuff, like how do you communicate with people better? Because it's sort of, I can't really assume that everyone in this room communicates super well already. I can't even assume I do, but I do it for a living, so like, so that's another thing. And I expect at some point we'll talk about personal experiences, because I'll tell you some about my personal experiences, and I'd be curious to hear other experiences that people have. Because I think that's going to be important, like, hey, how do we address the things that have already happened so they don't happen again, right? Or if when they do happen again, how does it be better the next time, right? And also, if people are feeling brave enough, we'll actually like do this in real time. And it'll be examples, like no judgment, no shame. If you're not good at it, it's fine, we're gonna work on it. But we'll do this here to say like, okay, here's how you can have this conversation in a more effective way. And I fully expect that it's gonna be like, people are going to have different ideas about that, and we'll make that work. We'll do it in real time and say, like, how do you do this differently, better? What would you say and be different? You know, what is your experience happening, right? So, here are my expectations for this. The first one is that I really desperately need at least one person or two people to participate here. Because otherwise, it's going to be me talking to myself up here, and that's going to get real interesting real fast. So please, if someone feels comfortable, please participate. Luckily, I brought friends with me, so I'll just make them do it. But it would be nice if someone else did, right? Also, be the conversation you wish to have about this, right? If you grew up having a hard time with this, like, if you're gonna eventually become a parent, like, you wanna do that better, right? You wanna do that differently, hopefully, than you have. Unless, like, you're one of those people that's like, actually, I want my child to suffer in exactly the same way I did. Which is a very specific ideology, but I can't knock it necessarily. Also, I kind of expect that you'll learn at least like one thing in here, hopefully more than one, but like I can't really control that. So, also, if you feel the need to share, or if other people share, please do so appropriately and kindly. Read the room. Don't say naughty words if you're not supposed to say naughty words. It's being recorded, so like I'll have a photo of you doing it. But share appropriately and kindly, right? If people share personal stuff, like don't make fun of them. That's rude and awful. Don't do that. Safe space, whatever. Right? Also, this is my first time doing this panel, so like real talk, this could get real weird real fast. So be cool. If it gets weird, we'll make it work, but like it could get weird. So like We're all in this together, it's gonna be fine. But you know, spoilers, it's gonna get strange. So here's some research stuff for you here, right? So psychology research does a lot of stuff on communication, which is pretty obvious because like we as people that are in psychology, like part of the job is you have to talk to people, whether you enjoy doing that activity or not. You can be a researcher where you have to talk to like fewer people, but you still have to talk to people. So there's a lot of research on psychology of how to do this, right? So there's 4 really big things. Yeah. There's 4 really big things for this. So the first one is your message that you're sending is not the message that always gets received, right? We've all had this happen where you're like trying to say something to somebody and they don't get it the way that you intended. And that can be a real hard time because you think, you know, it's clear in your head when you say it and the other person has absolutely no idea what you told them. And you're like, well, why? Why don't you know what I just told you, right? And that becomes problematic. And this can get into a thing where there's like a difference between your intention and your impact, right? Because we've all said something that like sounded good in our head, but like didn't actually sound good, and like maybe we hurt somebody's feelings, or it confuses them, or all those things. And just keep in mind that this happens. And so that's something we have to address, is like, make sure you're saying what you actually mean to say, and then make sure you're actually saying it, right? And we'll talk about ways you can do that a little bit, but that's part of the process, right? We're all gonna miss sometimes. The expectation isn't that you're gonna be perfect at this, the expectation is you're gonna try to do it slightly differently, right? Also, you can't not communicate. Like, I know that's not a perfectly clean sentence, but like, everything you do is communicating something, whether it's verbally, non-verbally, behavior, all that, right? Silent treatment that someone gives you is a communication. It's a communication they don't want to talk to you, presumably. You can't do this in a way that just completely shuts it down. We are naturally social creatures who naturally communicate things, whether we're intending to do it or not. And we've all experienced this, right? Where like someone's talking to you and they're like sounding interested, but they don't look interested. They're communicating something, whether they know they're doing that or not, right? Also, our messages have contents and feelings, right? So you may say a fact or a sentence, but oftentimes there's a tone, there's a feeling, there's a thing behind that, right? And they don't always match up, and that's a problem, because if they don't match up, that can confuse the other person, right? If you say like, yeah, I'm interested, but you're like standing here like, they're not gonna know which one to believe necessarily. Where I have a problem with this is email, because I work in academia and email is life, and like people send some real terse sounding or real confusing sounding emails, and you read it and you're like, oh. Like, I guess I'm in trouble now. You like talk to a person, they're like, no, that was a friendly email. And you're like, it was absolutely not a friendly email. It was extremely unfriendly, in fact. So that's a problem, right? And especially when we use digital communication, like we do a lot these days, texting, email, whatever it is, a lot of that stuff can get lost, right? Like, you ever have to try to punctuate a text message the right way so you don't sound like a jerk? Like, all day, every day, right? You're like, if I put an exclamation point, does that make me sound like too enthusiastic? I don't know, right? What do I put a comma in here so it makes it sound good? That's the thing that happens to us. And also a common thing we've actually learned from a lot of research, we actually believe nonverbal content more than we believe verbal content. So if someone's talking to you and they're like turned away from you and not interested, but they're saying other things, you're more likely to read their body language and go, wow, this person doesn't like me, right? And that can be problematic sometimes because we don't always know what we're doing with our bodies. We don't always communicate accurately. And this can be things like body language, it can be tone though, right? Like, you ever interrupted somebody when they're doing something and they're like, oh, how's it going? You're like, oh, I'm fine, right? Means you're not fine. That means you are communicating a different message than you actually said, right? So being aware of that is part of this process. Be aware of what you're doing with your body and your tone of voice and your positioning and all that stuff, because you might be potentially confusing people, and especially depending on what your role here is, that might have different consequences, which we'll talk a little bit about. But that's sort of the basic level stuff. For more research stuff, things that are key to effective communication, one of them is model and demand respectful behavior in conversation, right? If you are rude to people in conversation, they are not going to want to be nice to you back. That's how it works, right? Because one of the things you do, and you've all done it, is like, well, if they're going to be that way, I'm going to be that way. But then that doesn't get you anywhere, does it? Right? Or at least it gets you a place that you don't necessarily want to go, which we've all been there. Also, this is a hard one for some people, but you can only control certain things. You can only control you in a conversation. As much as you can set the other person up for success and to be nice to you, at the end of the day, you can only do your part in the conversation. Meaning, if I teach you to do this the perfect way and you're like so good at it, you can still go talk to somebody and they can still be a jerk to you. That's the sad and honest truth of this. And we don't want that to happen, right? We hope that like by setting it up the right way, you do it the right way. But ultimately, you have to own that you can only own your part. And for some people, that's terrifying. For some people, that's liberating, and it's sort of a 50-50 split, right? But you can do this in the right way. You can approach a conversation the right way. And what I tell people all the time in therapy is like, look, if you do it the right way and they're still a jerk to you, then that's not your problem anymore. You did it right. You did everything you were expected to do, right? This next one's gonna be hard for some people too. You have to be non-defensive, right? And when I say defensive, I don't mean like, oh, well, that's part of it. But we all do this. That thing where you're sitting there listening to somebody and you're just really thinking about what you're gonna say next. We all do it, especially if you have like a thing where you're like, I'm kind of anxious, so I gotta figure out what I'm gonna say. The problem is if you get stuck in your head, you maybe don't listen to them quite the right way, or you miss something, or you like, oh, I'm gonna say this thing, and then the conversation goes right past it, and you're like, oh, but that was when I was gonna say the thing, right? Which I do all the time. I did it like 20 minutes ago, and I was like, oh, he'll circle back around, I'll say it next time, right? But especially when you're having tough conversations, this comes in where like, don't plan your next thing, and like if you're having a fight with somebody, don't plan the next mean thing you're gonna say to them, because like, you're more likely to do that, and that's not gonna get you the place you wanna be necessarily. Don't necessarily think of like, well, what do they actually mean when they say that? Because if you are trying to figure that out, you maybe aren't listening to what they're telling you, but also there's a better way to figure out what they mean. And it's very obvious. I don't know if anyone's ever done it before. It's where you ask them, what did you mean when you said that? And we're not necessarily trained to do that, right? Especially people that like, I don't know, like another thing in school where they're like, maybe you just ask them what they mean. Like, that's not, you just have to follow the instructions. What if the instructions are unclear? Well, you just follow the instructions. Oh, okay, well this is not working out, right? So that's the thing. Also, there's a lot of interesting research on self-awareness. And this means a lot of things, but being aware of what you bring into a conversation, right? What if we're talking about stuff and you have like a thing where like you sound like someone I once knew who I don't like? If that upsets you somehow, that might impact our conversation, right? Or what if you have a history of this conversation not going well and you just automatically assume it's not going to go well? Well, then you already kind of lost, right? Because you're already sitting there like expecting it to be bad. And we're not all going to fix this, it's not a perfect thing. But the more you're aware of the stuff that goes on for you, the easier this is going to get, right? And the last thing of this is Hanlon's razor. You've all heard of Occam's razor, right? It's like a philosophical thing, a razor. It's like the very simplest bear thing. Hanlon's razor is like, don't think people are mean if they're actually stupid. Like, and I don't mean you're stupid, but like, sometimes people say real dumb things. And sometimes they say dumb things on accident because they don't know any better. And so when someone tells you like, anyways, Chinese cartoons, right? They're not always trying to like dog you. Sometimes they actually don't know. And that's a hard one to come back from. And it's also like, that annoys me and it's kind of offensive. Like, what do I say? Sometimes you have to give a person the benefit of the doubt and be like, maybe they just don't know. And it's not always up to you to teach them. That's the thing we've learned. It's not always up to you to teach them to be better. But sometimes you have to just be like, maybe they just don't know. And maybe they don't have a frame of reference for this. And do your best to make that work, right? And again, it's not always easy, and sometimes people are going to be like purposefully stupid about stuff. And then you don't really have a responsibility to do anything past that, but it happens. So now we're going to move on to the fundamentals part of this. So here are just basic level stuff that if you don't know how to do already, you're going to figure out how to do. So I'm about to tell it to you. But some of these are really easy. But this is all things that are like basics, communication 101, how to do this. Now I don't expect you to do all of these all the time because people will get real annoyed with you real fast, right? Because all of this has a sort of look, and I'll show you what it looks like here in a second. But first, you gotta make sure you actually have their attention. If someone's sitting on their phone and you're trying to have a serious conversation with them, that's probably gonna go less good, right? That's not to say it's always gonna be bad, but if you need somebody's undivided attention, make sure you have it. Also, like, don't try to have a serious conversation, like they're sitting there playing video games and you're like, I think we should talk about this. And they're like, can it wait? Like, I can't pay attention to you right now, right? So set yourself up for success. Have the conversation at a time when the other person's gonna have the conversation with you, not at them, right? And conversations at people is hard. Also, send messages that actually mean what you're trying to say. Don't play games with people. Don't be like, well, if I say it this way, I'll see how they react, and then I'll see what I'll say, right? Actually say what you mean, and sometimes that means be blunt. Sometimes that means like, hey, I need to talk to you about this thing I like. Not, hey, do you have a second, right? Sometimes you have to just go like right at it. The other one here is actually get feedback from people. If you say something and you're not sure they understood you, ask them if they understood you. And I know that you're not coded to do that because like that kind of seems patronizing sometimes. But if you have something important to say to people, you should probably see if they understood what you said. Because a bad thing would be them walking away from your conversation thinking you said something different than you actually said. Because then you're going to be like working against that next time you talk to them, right? And this happens a lot in a lot of different contexts. And this is really bad in, say, like, you're in a college class and the professor says something and no one understands it, but no one asks a question. So then they're just like, well, everyone in that class, 300 people just learned that wrong. Oops. Maybe they'll go on to be a doctor someday. They might need that information. Uh-oh. Right? You don't want that to happen. So be clear. Get feedback. Also, this is actually a thing. Like, actually square up to the person you're talking to. I know, like, we all want to do that thing where you're, like, doing your own, like, fidgeting or, like, looking a certain way. But, like, actually, like, 1v1 the person. Like, it can look different ways. There's different ways to do this. Therapists sometimes do the diagonal. Like, you put your, like, upper body to them, but you put your legs over here kind of thing. But, like, as much as possible, like, look them in the face. Because you need some of those cues. And actually, we hear information better if we're looking at somebody. Anyone know anybody that's like a hearing deficit somehow? And like, it's easier if you look at them because otherwise they can't hear you very well. I know somebody like that, right?
I've met so many people who have that exact same problem.
Oh yeah, I have family members that like, if you're in the other room and you say words, they can't hear you no matter how loud you are.
What?
Exactly. And it's like, if you actually look at them and actually like, here, let me tell you the thing I'm trying to tell you, it goes a lot better, right? And that's a thing that like, is a communication thing and is also like a physiology thing. It's, your ears are here and they're meant to hear certain things, right? Also, some weird research evidence suggests you should actually favor your right ear. So like lead with your right ear a little bit. Like not like this exactly, because that's like a weird way to have a conversation with people. But the process, one of the processing centers on your brain for your auditory system is on the left side of your brain, which connects to the right side of your body, right? If you don't know that, you now know that. But there's evidence that if you favor your right ear, like you're going to be better at understanding conversations. And this is not like perfect; it's always going to work. But there's some evidence to suggest this. So maybe like like give them a slight like right side lean to it, Only sit on that side of them when you're talking to them, whatever you gotta do. Also, you gotta practice your like minimal encouragers. That's what they call it in therapy. That's when you ever have someone talk to you and go, oh yeah. You gotta practice that. Now, don't do this all the time because it pisses people off. Straight up. Like, I had a college professor who was a therapist. She was a great therapist, but she was so annoying because she was like actively listening to you. She actually listened, and it was so annoying. Which I know that's like counterproductive, right? She's in there, and you're like, oh, so it's Thursday. She's like, You're like, well, and it's like raining. Yeah. You're like, could you stop? Could you space them out better? Right? But that's a way for people to let you know, like, I'm hearing you, I'm still with you, right? And this is where you get that dreaded, like if you're on digital, you get the 3 dots. If you're on Apple, it's like they're typing. And you're like, just hurry up already, right? A lot of that too. But if you give the, like, I'm still listening to you, keep going, that helps sometimes. Because sometimes people don't know when you're supposed to stop talking. And if you, like, stop doing that, you're like, now it's time to stop. Sometimes people do a little better at that. Also, don't interrupt people. This seems obvious, like we all learned this, but like don't interrupt people as much as possible, even if you think you have like something really devastatingly clever and interesting to say. Because if you interrupt them, it sends the wrong vibe sometimes. Now, sometimes you can do this. It's like important, like the house is on fire. Like, hey, stop talking. The house is on fire, right? There are important ways to do that, but don't interrupt people. Also, ask for clarification. Hey, did you say this? This is what I thought you said. Right? Easy enough. But sometimes we forget to do that. Also, you can do things like, okay, let me see if I'm hearing you right. You said this. Because if you say it back to them and you're wrong, they'll be like, no, I didn't say that. And then you can get them to figure out where the disconnect is. Also, if you're actually having this conversation, use open-ended questions as much as you can. And like, this is not like, was your day good or bad? It's a closed question, right? There's two answers. You say, how was your day? How was your day is an open question, right? So for example, if you're talking about anime, it's like, oh, well, is that this kind or this kind? Okay, that's not a helpful question. Like, oh, what kind of things do you like? Is a much more open question that they can tailor how their response looks, which goes a long way. Yeah?
How can you phrase that if you're actually trying to find out if they enjoyed an anime?
Enjoying a specific one?
Yeah,
Just
enjoyed, okay, I heard about this. Did you enjoy it? Did you like it? Because that makes it seem like you're asking like a yes or no or...
Yes. There's a little tweak you can do this. Be like, how did you like it? How did you like it is different than did you like it. It's only a very subtle change, but that's the way to do it, right? Sometimes it's as simple as changing one word or being like, oh, what did you think of it? What did you think of it allows any opinion that they have, which you may not want, but like, you might get anyway. But just little changes like that. And it's one of those things, it takes a minute because you don't always realize you're asking a closed question. It's one of the things in therapy, when you're training to become a therapist, they like just beat it out of you. Like, don't ask any closed question ever because it's evil and wrong. Which it's not, but like, if you're only being like, yes or no, they're not gonna feel like it's an open conversation, right? But it is hard, it takes practice. So basically what I'm describing here is therapy. I know weird that psychological research people did a lot of research and it turns out the perfect style of communication looks exactly like the thing they're already doing. I don't know if that seems problematic to anyone else, but it is slightly problematic, right? Like, that'd be like, I don't know, an athlete being like, the best way to be an athlete is the exact way I do it. Like, I don't know if that works, right? But this is a version that, you know, this looks more traditionally like a traditional, like, modern talk therapy. And I'm not saying always do this because I'll show you an example and it'll get real fast. But there are nuggets of this that when you're trying to have a proper, like, good sit-down conversation, these will go a long way. So, does anyone want to be brave? And like, I will talk therapist today. Please do not actually tell me any actual things about your life that will be like sensitive, but like, say words and we'll do this. Anyone?
If no one else raises their hand, I will.
Like, you don't have to say anything interesting. You can say anything. I'll just do it to you. Go for it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I've been coming to these conventions ever since the mid-2000s, and I remember my first one. My mother's dropping me and my friends off over at Acon back when it was the Adams Mark Hotel still.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So she drives up and she's everybody in cosplay and she's all like, oh my God, I'm dropping my son and his friends off at a convention full of freaks, geeks, and weirdos.
Sure.
I'm sitting there and I'm just like, really, Mom? Really? I did take it a little personal for a while there, but then I remembered what the Fresh Prince used to say. There's no need to argue, parents just don't understand.
Yeah, and you know, I appreciate you saying that because it sounds like it was sort of a process, right? Of like, it didn't always look the way I wanted to, and you had to have something that kind of made it make sense for you, right? How was that? Did I feel like I listened to you?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, right? And like, now that would get real old real fast. If I did that all day, every day, you would not like me. Because I would just be like, how does that make you feel? And you can only get asked, how does that make you feel enough times in a day before you want to like stab someone. I get it. That's why if you're a therapist in a relationship, you have to actually turn that off and be like, oh, that sounds like it sucks. You don't say that to people in therapy usually, although you can for a point. But you know, but that's the thing, right? It's a process, and it's like lean into people, like, oh, it sounds like you're saying this. Oh, that sounds tough, Or saying something like, oh, I can see how that would make you feel this way, right? Notice what I didn't do was like, oh yeah, I had the same experience, right? Because that makes it about me, not about me, right? And we all do that because like, one of our favorite things to do is like, someone tells a story about their dog, and you're like, you have a dog? I have a dog. Let me tell you about my dog. As again, as a therapist, they tell you not to do that because like, it's not about you, it's about the other person, right? But that's the short version of this. And if you've never been in therapy before, it literally looks like that for like 50 minutes. Because therapy is a 15-minute hour because that's how science works. But that's more or less what this looks like. Different people do it slightly differently. And I'm not telling you to do that all the time, but that's an example of how you can approach somebody in a way that draws a different conversation out of them. Because if you let them feel like you've heard them, that's going to go a long, long way, right? And that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to make this different. We're not going to be perfect. We're making it different. So this is for parents. So if you are a parent, good on you. Good, thank you. I appreciate you being here. Or if you want to be a parent, these are ideas, right? And this is specifically from literature of like, how do I talk to my kid? Because literally, if you Google this, like psychology, how do I talk to my kid? There's like a bazillion results. And now some of them, of course, are like pop psychology articles about like, I posted on my mom blog about how you talk to your child, right? Which is not great, but there's a lot of them out there that are like straight up from psychology presentations and like websites. One of the things, if you have kids, you got to be available for them. You already know that if you have kids, I'm quite sure. But like, you actually have to be present for that. You actually just stop and listen to them. And like, I get it. If your kid's a certain amount of age, they don't have anything interesting or novel to say, like, because that's how children work. Like, children are like, Dad, like, what? That dog over there is brown, and you're like,
Of course it is.
yeah, honey, it is, right? I get it. It's tough. But you have to get into that practice, right? Because if your kid like learns you can't talk to them, you're kind of lost. Because it's hard to unlearn that. And for some of us, we have parents that just literally taught us that from a very early age. You want to talk about the thing, you're like, shut down, right? And that doesn't feel good. And if you learn that, it's hard to unlearn it, especially without the parent changing, right? Also, sometimes it's to your benefit to start this conversation. It doesn't feel like it sometimes. Being a parent's hard. And if you're like, I notice you're really into this thing, can you tell me more about it? Goes a long way versus like, why do you spend all your time in that room doing this? Those are two different ways to have that conversation. And if you start it the right way, it's going to go a lot better, trust me.
Or spending all your money on this.
Yeah, why are you spending all the allowance I give you on this? What even is that, right? And like, that's a different conversation for a different panel that I'm not qualified to have. But like, I would love to hear it. Also, sometimes as a parent, you have to listen even if it's difficult, right? Your kid might tell you something that you don't agree with, or that you don't think is an actual thing, or shouldn't be an actual thing. I get it. It's hard. You still have to listen to it, though. Now, you could afterwards be like, you go to your partner or whatever, and be like, our kid told me that you done this thing today. Now, of course, like, don't make fun of your kid as much as possible, right? But like, sometimes you need to. You go on like the Fairy Facebook Parents group, and you're like, let me tell you what my kid said today. Right? I get it. But you actually have to listen to him even if it's difficult. Your kid might be like, I have this opinion, and it's super dumb, and you're like, ugh. You still have to listen to it. It goes a long way, trust me. Because eventually they'll be like, wow, I said this dumb thing to you. Like, you're like, yeah, I know. You said random things to me. It's good. We're making it work, right? Also, you have to validate your children, especially if you're having this kind of conversation with them, especially if you started it. If you ask them to tell you something, and you're like, well, that's stupid, you've lost, right? Because if you start a conversation and they're like opening up to you and being genuinely interested, if you shut them down, they're going to remember that. And like, I know so many anime nerds that have been shut down in that exact way. And like, that had to hide it, or, you know, did a lot of weird stuff to like make sure our parent doesn't judge me for this. And I get it. I get where you're coming from as a parent. Maybe it's weird. You've never seen it before. Maybe it's scary. But there's a way to have that conversation and be like, oh, okay, that sounds like you really care about it. It sounds important to you, right? Also, interest matters. Interest is actually a huge deal. There's a lot of research about it. And there's a quote that I really like. It says, it is interest which is primary. Interest supports both what is necessary for life and what is possible. Interest is responsible for our learning, exploratory activities, and creativity. That just doesn't mean your interest, but other people's interest in you, right? If I did these panels and no one ever showed up to them, I would stop doing them, right? Because why would I care? No one's interested, right? You don't want to be the person that tells your kid, like, no one is interested in what you're doing. You just don't want to do that, right? Also use I statements, like, I am curious about this. I feel like this when you say this. I feel concerned that you like this, right? One of the parents who inspired this was like, my kid watches some real violent, messed up stuff, and like, I'm concerned about it, but I don't know how to talk to him. And it's like, I feel concerned about what you're watching. I feel concerned about the level of violence, that kind of thing. Because the thing is, maybe your kid isn't watching it because they just love hardcore like murder violence. Maybe your kid's watching it for a different reason that they could explain to you if you asked for, right? And just having it coming from a place of you, not like, I think you should do this, whatever. What you feel about it goes a long way. Because then they can say, like, here's how I feel about it, and then you can work that out, right? Okay. So, if you are the person starting this conversation, meaning you are the anime nerd who wants to talk to someone, like your parent, or your friend, or your partner, or whoever, I'm not judging whoever you want to talk to. If you are the person doing this, also use I statements. I feel this way when I do this. I feel like I like this because it reminds me of this, right? Not, I think you should watch it because this. That gets into some real weird territory, right? Because everyone's had that one friend who gave them an anime recommendation that was just like, ooh, what? Why do you think I would like that? Right? What do you think is wrong with me that I like that? Right? And we all have that one anime that we already know something's wrong with us because we like it. So like, don't open with that one. You're like trying to be like, let me tell you all about anime, and I will explain it using Madoka Magica. And you're like, please don't. Don't start with that. Like, open with something like easier, like, I like Dragon Ball Z because they fight each other. You're like, yes. I mean, still shirtless men screaming at each other until they change their hair color, but like, it's easier. Like, trust me, I've tried. Right? Also, communicate the why, not just the content. We all do this, right? I like the show. They do this and they do this and this happens. What are they supposed to say to that? Oh, that sounds cool, right? Or we've all had that one at a con where they're like, oh yeah, I don't know, I've never seen it. And then no conversation anymore, right? If you say like, oh, I love the show because it does this thing, right? Give you an example. I love Evangelion because it's a deep head trip that is weird stuff. Maybe you wouldn't like it because you don't like those things. But like, if you can tell me why you like a thing, maybe me as a parent, I feel better about that, right? You watch something violent and you're like, oh, I really like it because it has like real world problems in it. Now, if you were like, I really like it because like people die in it all the time, like then we would have a different conversation about it. Maybe we don't have to talk, right? Yeah. But communicate the why and why you like something, and not just like it's cool. Because it's cool is a good reason, but like it's not a great communication reason. Like, why is it cool? What about it is cool, right? Also, be prepared to explain the thing you like. And I know this gets hard because you're like, why do you like that thing? Give me precise examples. You don't have to have like an army of examples, but be able to give examples if asked, right? Like if I'm asking you, why do you like this anime, even if it's hyper violent and weird? You can be like, oh, well, I actually like it because of X, Y, Z. Here's an example of why I like it, right? That goes a long way because sometimes people are asking you because they're concerned or just because they don't know, right? And if you mess that one up and you're like, I love it, people die and crimes happen to them all the time, you're like, maybe you should have approached that slightly differently, right? So, now it's time for the part of the show where I tell you about my personal experiences and then hope that one of you shares yours. So, when I was in high school, I was wildly into the game Final Fantasy 11. Anyone ever played it? Best game ever made. It's still online. It's like an 18-year-old online video game. Originally came out on PS2. That tells you how long ago it was. Yeah, it's rough. It's still online. I still play it. It's terrible. I love it. Anyway, so I loved Final Fantasy 11 when I was in high school, right? And my high school was like 30 minutes away from my house, and I couldn't drive because I wasn't there yet. And my grandma had to take me to high school every day, there and back, most of the time. And you know, you're just like a high school kid, you just like talk about stuff, even though no one cares about what you're talking about, right? Yeah. So my grandmother, bless her soul, she's still alive. I don't know why I said that, she's alive. But sorry, Grandma, you're alive, I get it. But my grandmother was super good at just like not really understanding anything of what I was saying, but like being interested in it. So this is from, I don't know if you can see the picture super clearly. This is a monster in Final Fantasy 11. And Final Fantasy 11 is like notorious for having just like the most esoteric, dense BS to like make stuff happen. And there's this like monster that like you sat around and waited for it to spawn. And then you had to have somebody grab it and hold it till all your friends could get there and kill it. But it was like this really complicated, like it spawns in a window, and the window opens at this time, and you do this, and it was a lot of systems that get you here, right? And my grandmother, I told her all about this one day for like 35 straight minutes about like, here's the interesting thing happening, here's the mechanics of how it works, here's how you program it, here's what happens. And she probably understood literally 5% of what I was talking about, because she's like, there are online video games. I'm like, okay, Grandma, we're already past that right now.
What does online mean?
What does online mean? I'm like, God damn it, Grandma, I can't explain the internet to you. Really, I can't, right? But she sat there the whole time and she's like, oh, that sounds like this. Oh, that sounds like an interesting way to do things. Is everything in the game like that? What if you're the only person that does it, right? She was able to engage with it without actually understanding or getting why I cared about it necessarily. But she knew why I cared. She knew I cared about it, and she knew that I just wanted somebody to talk to about it, right? And if she had shut me down and been like, I legitimately don't care what you're talking about, I probably would have never talked to her about anything like that ever again. And that would have been okay, maybe, right? But that opened a conversation versus closing it, right? And that went a long way. Like, I can still talk to her about stuff that she still doesn't understand, but she'll try. And that's all that matters, right? All I'm asking her is to be like, I'll ask you an interesting question once in a while. And be like, that's an interesting question. I'll answer it for you, right? Because all you really want is for somebody to be like, I'll ask you a question so then I can tell you more about it, right? We've all been there. So what about y'all? Anyone ever actually have a good example of this? Like you didn't get automatically shut down? You had a very fruitful conversation about some ridiculous thing that you enjoy?
I guess my little brother and I did not get along very well in our first few years because a lot of stuff happened like after his birth. So in my head, 7-year-old me thought that it was his fault. And it wasn't until like our teenage years that we were finally trying to like get to know each other.
Yeah.
One thing that he was trying to be really in the I guess not really in the closet, when the Brony fandom was getting really popular, he thought he was the only one, and then he showed me the show, and then I got into it, and then I found out that my little brother was into it, and I'm just like, come with me. And so that kind of like, by me being open and willing to listen to it, now we're both like hardcore fans, and we're even going to like a convention that's happening next week for it. So
Okay,
it's like,
yeah. That's a cool story, and like a good example too of like sometimes that doesn't always come from one person to another person. Sometimes it's other people, right? Sometimes another person can show you a thing and it can help you understand. And maybe that's a good note for people that want to be interested too, right? Maybe there's someone out there who knows slightly more than you that can be like, hey, watch it. You might like it, right? Or at least watch a little bit of it so you can understand it, right? That's a parent thing. Like sometimes you have to check and be like, the way you described this doesn't sound like a thing that I want you to watch, but like I'll watch it for a second. I'll watch it for a second and see how I feel about that, right? Yeah, fair. Anyone else want to go over? Yeah, behind you and then I'll go to you.
Me and my oldest sister, like,
Not her.
There's another one.
There's another.
Okay.
but, like, when I would talk about, like, something that I play that she doesn't play or watch, she'd be like, I don't care right now. Until I started watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is one on Netflix.
Sure.
And she likes it, and now we can just, like, talk about it. And it's a lot, like, funnier when you, like, have someone to talk to.
Yeah, and I think you're getting at something important, right? Like, there's a reason we're all at an anime convention, and it's not just because we have a lot of disposable income and time. But you're at a convention partially because you want to be around other people that like the stuff you do, and it is hard to be the only one that likes something, right? But if you can connect to somebody, like, oh, we both like this thing, now we know what we can talk about, right? And sometimes you have to feel people out a little bit and be like, what do you like? Why do you like it? It's like, that's an important question sometimes. But yeah, it's cool.
Know your audience.
Yeah, right?
If you're talking to grandma, you can't go too far into the details and stuff.
Right,
about-
like I would not talk to my grandmother about my love for the show Keijo, which is an excellent show, but is awful in every single way and should not be discussed by actual classified nice humans.
Up until episode 7 or 8.
Is that how far it goes?
No, it goes up until episode 12, but the nipple twisting?
Yeah, it gets weird. And, like, I totally enjoy the thing, but like I know that I shouldn't talk to other people about it in public. You know, it's just not a thing. Yeah.
I'm gonna say a quick thing. So I was watching anime,
Mhm.
and my grandma asked if Josuke was Elvis Presley.
Could be. I mean, JoJo's like, is there? I don't know if there's an Elvis reference in JoJo's, but like, if there isn't, it's gonna happen, right? You had one, right?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Now, this is, of course, again, anime with a sibling story. It's
Mhm.
a good personal experience and a shutdown experience.
All rolled in one.
Well, two different experiences,
Oh,
but
okay.
I'll save the shutdown for later if we talk about that.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, but anyway, this was around 2005, and it was when Fooly Cooley, of all things, was about to
Furiguri.
it was about to debut on Adult Swim, back when
Mhm.
Adult Swim was somewhat enjoyable.
Hot take.
By the way, thank you.
For the Furiguri or the hot take of. It continue.
Anyway, so she never really cared much for anime, but then she sees the commercials on Adult Swim. She's like, hey, let's check this out together. So we sit down, and my God, it was hard to hold back the laughter without waking the parents up.
Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah, and then later that night, just for shiggles, she ends up watching Lupin the Third.
Yep.
And she's
Solid.
joined that one too, and then we both don't want to go to bed, so we stayed up until 4 in the morning waiting for both Fooly Cooley
To
and
rerun.
Lupin the Third to rerun.
The quintessential, like, back when anime didn't stream experience.
Yes.
I've been there. Like, it's 3 a.m. Let's watch this reboot dub of this Naruto that we got, and that's the latest episode. We're gonna watch it for a
At 144p.
In 440p. You're right.
You guys are cute. Streaming, that's precious.
Right, yeah. Like, I remember talking to people that are like, we had to self-dub things on VHS.
Yes, we have dubbed VHS tapes.
I remember when you had to go buy the released VHS at Sam Goody Music, and there was 3 episodes of DBZ on it, and it was like $19.
It was still $20, yeah.
Yeah, it was still $20. And I was like, that was like progress, because like before then it was just like a bunch of dudes in a basement passing around VHS.
I'll see your Sam Goody and I'll raise you Suncoast Motion Picture Company.
Yeah.
We just had a conversation. It was gold when that had 5 episodes.
Anyway, moving on. Talking about the good old days, and you're just gonna nostalgia all over the place. Which, love nostalgia, but like,
Yeah.
it used to be harder to be an anime fan, right? Now it's a lot better. You don't have to leave the house much. You can buy everything on Amazon.
Everything's
It's
on
great.
Amazon.
The grocery store is Pocky. It's awesome. It's overpriced, but like, what do you do? So, this is the part of the show where we get to practice this. So, if you're bold and interested, we can do this like literal live. I'll set up 2 chairs and we'll just do this. And the point is not to like, okay, how are you going to do this? Like, are you good at it or bad at it? The point of it will be like, I will help you. We will all help you, right? Because you will know whether something went well or not, right? Maybe the people sitting there won't. This is how you train a therapist, straight up. You like have them do therapy in front of you and then like tell them how they did not good or good. Depending on which version it is, right? Now, of course, I'm not going to force anyone to do this. If you don't want to do it, like I will just sit up here and talk to myself or something. But like, if this feels like it would be a useful experience and like getting that feedback, we can do that live right here. We got time for it. And if we don't, then whatever, right? You want to go? Anyone else want to go? Or I can do it. I'll be there in a second.
We'll see, one of us just fuck.
Fight to the death.
I guess
I always
I'll-
encourage people when they raise hands to fight
Do
to
we
the
have to
death. And no
stand
one
there?
else.
You as always.
I use my classes all the time. They're like, which one of us goes? I'm like, fight to the death.
So, what do we need?
I'm gonna grab chairs. Y'all sit. Y'all can arrange them as you feel appropriate. Let's do that. Because you've learned something about placement, right? At least I taught you. Cool. That's not bad. Each of you grab chairs, sit across from each other as much as you feel comfortable. Don't foul each other first one day. That would be weird. Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Yes?
Create your bubble.
Yeah, respect people's bubbles. You know, do all this. Sit how you feel appropriate, right? Don't mind me, I'm gonna grab the mic and just sit over here and stalk you. But it's fine. Don't worry about it. We'll be All right, so which one of you wants to be which?
Who of subject?
So who wants to be what the person like?
Subject to therapist.
Yeah, who wants to be? Yeah, kind of. Right. Who wants to be the one that has the like starts the conversation? Who wants to be the other person? Right. You can make shit like a parent. You can be a friend, partner, whatever you want to do. Okay, so you'll be the listener. Like, so you're the interested party. You're the person that likes the thing. That make sense?
That makes sense, yeah.
Okay. So who wants to start? Which way do you want this to go?
By the listeners.
Okay, so you want to be like you're starting this conversation with this person. Make sense?
Okay.
Go for it.
I like anime.
Solid. 10 out of 10.
Really? What kind of anime do you like?
I like to watch rom-coms. There's different ways that it can be shown, but it changes every few years.
What's the rom-com you're watching now?
I don't remember if it's technically a rom-com. Love is War. It's these two people. Imagine Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but instead of guns, the weapons are actually like conversations, and so it becomes this weird psychological thing.
The guns are not actually guns.
Okay, so like what kind of stuff goes on in that? Like what kind of psychological warfare stuff?
I guess because it's during these two characters are in high school, so it's during a time whenever I guess their social status means everything, and you can't afford to be turned down. And so because of that, they have to like make sure they can successfully, I guess, ask the other person out without seeming like they're trying to.
Oh, like they have to be indirect about it?
Yes.
And like there are different classes. Like one's rich, one's poor.
Insider information, you're cheating.
And no, that's right. They are different classes.
Okay, I'm gonna pause real quick. How do we think this is going?
Pretty good.
Pretty good, right? I think good. What did you like? What did you not like? And not, we're not judging you. It's just,
I like how there was like open-ended questions continuously.
Right? Especially on this end, right? Open-ended questions go a long way, right? Did you feel like you could say whatever you needed to say?
Yeah.
So you didn't feel like you had one right answer or a wrong answer?
Because like one thing that's kind of cheating is that we both technically have watched the anime, but I
Yes.
haven't watched it thoroughly, so I'm just catching myself. I'm like, oh right, there was a social thing which added more complexity to the story, and I forgot about it until you mentioned the open-ended question.
Yes, and this is actually funny because this happens when you train therapists too, because people want to help each other.
Yeah.
So like, he's maybe not doing it on purpose, but like, you have the tendency to like make the other person's job a little easier.
Leading questions.
Yeah, leading questions, right? But there's nothing wrong with that. But it kind of gives you a sense of like, how could this look, right? And what are the things maybe you would be prepared to talk about, right? Maybe you didn't know you'd have to explaining one particular anime, right? Maybe you thought you were gonna be explaining anime generally. Maybe that went a different direction? I don't know. Other things, how do you guys feel? How do other people feel? It's all good, you don't have anything.
I spoke with your body language. Well, it's very open.
Yeah, it's a good one, right? This is a good example of what body language looks
How
like.
am I doing this, honestly?
You get in the mode, right? Therapist people. Yeah, the body language goes a long way here, right? If y'all were like faced any further away from each other, it would be hard to maybe turn and talk to each other or to read what was going on. And in fact, the diagonal thing is like a thing you do in therapy, right? Especially if your room's too small and you can't like stare at each other. You do like diagonal, like, how does that make you feel, right? But this is a good example, right? You would want to be maybe around this distance, maybe facing each other around the same way, right? Yeah. Do you guys want to keep going or do you want to switch? You can switch roles, we can switch people. I'm open.
Let's try switching.
You want to switch roles?
Yeah, sure, I'll switch.
Okay, so flip it up. Now, who wants to start this one? Are you going to start it?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay, go for it.
I like unpopular anime.
Unpopular anime?
Yes.
Like what? I guess what would make it unpopular compared to unpopular?
Well, for starters, something that would make it unpopular is how few people actually even know what it is when they hear the name.
Oh, okay. So it's like outside of like the mainstream.
Basically, yes.
Okay.
but they're Yarigami-chan, How Clumsy You Are, Pretty Cure. There's one cosplayer here, and I think that's the only Pretty Cure cosplayer I've ever seen in anything. I'm just like, what, do you like a popular anime?
For me, I don't realize that they're unpopular until I go to a convention and I'm just like, wait, this came out this year or last year. Why am I the only one who has not recognized this arc or something? Or kind of like, I guess with the Pretty Cure, I've heard of Pretty Cure, I haven't watched it, but because I honestly thought that was a popular anime, I was surprised that there's honestly.
It's one of those anime that's popular in Japan and not in America.
Oh.
Japan really, really likes it, but America doesn't know it, which is a shame. It's like they're missing out. It's really, really good.
And the part of me also just when I was like, oh wait a second, I did know one. Show by Rock. It's all of the voice actors fell in love with it. They have fun making it, but when you go to a convention, you can only find it in the idol booths at all. Like no one really cosplays the characters, but the show's really cute. Like I guess because of that, it was very popular in Japan, but it didn't come over all that much over here.
Yeah, I gotta watch Show by Rock. I heard good things about it. I saw a screencast, people were posting about it. It's like super adorable. The characters even look like Sonic characters, especially the cat.
Oh yeah.
Get rid of those.
They have a transformation thing because there's one where they're anthropomorphic and there's one I guess more people looking and then there's just furry animals and
Yeah.
I'm gonna pause right there. So, y'all were doing really well. What happened?
I wanted to suddenly talk about in the mic form, but I'm like, wait, but I was supposed to be the listener.
Yeah, partially we got caught up in like, let's actually talk about anime, which is great. We love that. But that sort of drifted from the point, right? Which is not like it's not a bad thing. But I'm curious.
Appropriately make a conversation.
I'm curious how you all felt about what happened. What did you like? What did you feel like happened? What was going on with you? Or even you all?
Are you asking us or the audience?
Anyone, whoever wants to go.
I feel like it fluctuates a little bit.
How so?
I'm not sure if I can pin it down, but like I feel like I got a little too carried away, and then maybe she wasn't asking as many open-ended questions as necessary, and then I was starting to drift away a little bit. I was talking a little bit too much. I'm not sure.
And I appreciate the awareness. That's a self-awareness thing, right? Like there was a point where you felt like it got away from you a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's not like super noticeable, like I would call you out on that kind of thing. But yeah, like sometimes we get going and we don't necessarily remember where we started or know where we're going.
Yeah, or I guess remembering how to backtrack.
Yeah, or remembering how to backtrack, right? Because it's hard to do in a conversation when it's real live and it's going. Yeah, that's hard. And I think one point you made, which I would echo, is the length of what you were saying. Because the longer the sentence goes on, the longer the talking thing goes on, the easier it is to get lost. So I would think about that. Maybe a pointer would be try to keep it as concise as you reasonably can. Not like you have to only say clipped short sentences. But if you find yourself getting lost sometimes, that's a way to change that. And be like, okay, I'm talking, okay, I should finish my thought here at some point, right?
Yeah, I think I'm eating a listener as a history.
Yeah, and that's important, but some people maybe are better at one than the other, find it easier, right? I know I do the same thing. I'm supposed to say one sentence to people as a job. And like I'm sometimes like, oh man, that was 4 paragraphs. That's my bad, man. Right? But it's a natural human thing. One of the things we do is if the other person talks a long time, we feel compelled to also talk a long time. Which you get caught up in it sometimes, and then you're all talking for a really long time, right? It's not bad, it's just a thing you do.
I know one tendency I have, that I'm kind of like him, that like I'm usually like the listener
Mhm.
in a conversation, but there are exceptions, and I have 2 exceptions, one my boyfriend and another my neighbor Karina, and
Oh,
they're
sure.
like the really good listeners. Next thing I know, I'm the person that doesn't know how to stop the conversation and make it back about them again.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to know about yourself, maybe. If you're the one starting this conversation, expecting the other person to listen to you, you can know that that's going to be hard for you, or harder for you than it maybe strictly needs to be. And that's not wrong, it's not bad, but it is a thing to think about, right? Maybe you have to put yourself out of your normal headspace for it a little bit. Sure. Anything other that people notice or people want to change or do differently, or go right?
For both of them, for both sides, how exactly do you change from? I'm trying to think how to say this appropriately, but like you have a passion for something, and like when they was getting to the longer sentences, that's why I kind of felt as like, how do you draw that back in to where?
Sure.
I guess it shortens it.
Yeah, and that's a good point, right? If you're in that moment where you're either one or both of you is even off topic, how do you bring it back? And I'm curious, I'm sure someone has had this happen in their everyday life and it's been successful or not successful.
I can think of one right off the top of my head. Like,
Okay.
I would just have to loop it back around from the anime that I was talking about, bring it back to the popular anime, and then loop it back around to return, so just the original subject. Then
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah, so you can connect the dots, right? If you catch yourself drifting, you can connect the dots back to your original point. It might require you to talk longer, but like you can loop it back if you're still talking. Or be like, oh, no, hold on.
Sometimes I just call myself out like, well, I'm digressing and what I was originally talking about, and I'll go back to what I was originally talking about.
Yeah, and that's a good one. That's a good one. I do this in therapy all day, every day. Like, I will say something and like, well, there'll be a joke and we'll laugh and like, but back to what we were talking about. Sometimes that's like basic 101, but you're not coded to do it, but if you do it, it works. If you like, I feel like we started talking about something else, but what I meant to say was this, or maybe we should go back to this. No,
Just like, don't think.
no, for sure. But sometimes that's a good way to do it, is like call yourself out, or not to say call the other person out, 'cause I'm not encouraging you to be rude to people, but like, you can. But you can say like, oh man, I was really thinking that with this, or oh, I did this. Because a lot of people respond to that, especially if you don't make it about them. If they make it about you, that would feel worse, right? Like, you got us off topic. Feels different than like, I saw you kind of drifted there for a second. Let's talk about this thing. That's a good point though. How do you redirect? And that's gonna be a hard one. What if the other person says stuff and he just gets away from you? You might have to control the conversation a little bit, especially if you're the one that started it. You're like, what I actually meant to ask you was this. Sure. Other thoughts, or do you want to mix it up again?
Mix it up.
You said you were beef today?
Anything else?
I'll go.
Yeah.
I'll go.
Go for it. Oh, you can switch. Yes.
Switch.
Let's switch that.
Change places.
Change places. Yeah. This would be a really good time for like a Mad Hatter, like whole thing going on. Who wants to join? Or is it gonna be me?
Let's see the.
Go for it. Appreciate the volunteer spirit here. Because otherwise it would be me sitting in 2 chairs talking to myself, and that would be funny, but not necessarily useful.
Calling it out straight up is probably
So what are we gonna do? What roles are we, and what are we doing?
well, like
Maybe a parent.
You're a parent, okay? I think that by necessity makes you a child or something. How do you feel about that?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. If you must be the parent, I don't know. You both be parents? Okay, so who's starting this? If you all have preference, does the audience have preference?
I say let's let Dad go first.
Let's let Dad go first. I like that we assume you're Dad.
Yeah.
Assume.
So I saw your Netflix watch history, and you've been watching some stuff that's concerning me. What is that about?
Well, what are you talking about, Dad? What's the concern?
Well, the animated cartoon stuff seems very, very violent and concerns me.
Oh, you saw my anime collection.
Anime, what's that?
Well, it's animation from the country of Japan. It's been around for a long time and has continued to be recognized as an art form and is beloved by many fans here in America. That's,
Interesting. What do you like about it?
I love mostly the art style and the how do I put this? The directions the story goes, like there's horror, action, adventure, comedy, romance.
Wow, it really seems that anime has a lot of different genres that it encompasses. What do you find interesting about the more violent stuff that I saw on there?
I'm assuming you saw me watching Hellsing.
Same.
I love Hellsing because it's a different take on it's a modern take on if Count Dracula was a vampire. And in this particular anime, the character's name is Alucard, which is Dracula backwards, spoiler alert. And he works for an organization known as Hellsing, which is mostly is comprised of ancestors of the great vampire hunter Van Helsing. And their mission is to protect the world from vampire attacks, which have been increased lately by a Nazi organization called Millennium.
Interesting. So as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing well in school and whatever, I don't see any problem with you watching this, as long as you know that it's not real, that it's fantasy life, etc.
I'm pause right there. So I love everything about this. Always. But yeah, what happened there? Like, what do we like? What do we not like there?
I like the understanding.
I like the understanding parent, right? Because you could have gone real hard the other direction. It's like, what kind of weird trash are you watching on Netflix? Which is a valid question, but like harder, right? So appreciate that, right?
Okay, something that kind of threw me off. It was funny, and I understand where it's coming from.
Yep.
The historic documentary explanation that you was giving at the very beginning.
Yes, and it's funny because that kind of worked in that situation, right? Like maybe we would all like put our own spin on it or say it slightly differently, but you might actually meet somebody who doesn't actually know what anime is.
Mm-hmm.
The way I typically do it for people is to say like, it's like any other kind of animation, right? Like we have our own animation in America, other countries have animation too. That's just what theirs looks like. I do that for a couple reasons, but one of them is it links it to something people already understand. Because if you can make it so that they already kind of know what you're talking about, then you can just kind of explain the difference. But that was a good call, right? Like, it's animation, it's from Japan, it's been around for a while, you know, because they might think like, oh, it's this brand new thing, it's like infecting our youths, right? And it's like, no, it's not. Another thing you might add too is like, depending on what your age is and sort of who you're talking to, a lot of anime are made for different age groups, right? So you could be like, there are anime that are meant for people my age that are appropriate, right? Because some people think like cartoons for kids, kind of thing. You heard that one? I hear it all the time. To my detriment, since I love animation.
And then you want Penny and Stalking.
Yeah, and then you want Penny and Stalking, we're done, depending on your personal. Yeah, but, right, and that's a hard one, right? Like, how do you talk about that? But I think it was a good call, right? I think it was mostly like, to the point, here's facts that you might not know. And I'm wondering how that came across for you to like hear it. I mean, I know you were pretending, but.
No, like, you know, I was playing the role of the understanding parent.
Sure, at least
and so I was trying to really listen to what he was saying back to me when I asked him the open-ended questions and really kind of take in what he thought of the Netflix history.
It is Netflix history, which may or may not have a lot of weird things in it. Because everyone's Netflix history does. Don't worry about it. I assume. I can only think of my Netflix history. Crunchyroll history also. Yeah, but I think that's an important note of like, if the person's actually trying to listen to you, you don't always have to do it perfectly, right? You don't have to be great at this. If you can convince the other person to actually listen to you, you can make mistakes. You can say stuff that maybe is unclear, but sometimes you have to be prepared for like, if that happens, if something goes weird, what would happen, right? What other things do people notice happening? Or y'all too notice happening?
Body language.
Body language, right? We sort of put you in the same orientation, right? But the like leaning into each other, being sort of present and open to a conversation goes a long way. That helps, especially like if you're leaning back or away from them, or you're like arms crossed or things like that. We all do that, but that's a shutdown versus an open, right? One thing I noticed, there was a lot of good, like, I can tell you what I like about this, which I think any more in a certain direction becomes like, I'm giving you too much detail maybe, but the piece of like, this is really violent and whatever, but here's the thing I like about it. And the thing the list didn't start with, it's violent, which it can, right? One thing I maybe would say is, the genre piece was already introduced in the conversation. Lean on that a little bit, right? Like, it's horror, so it looks that way, right? Maybe you don't endorse it, right? You don't have to say that part, but if you tell dad it's a horror thing, dad might understand what a horror movie looks like, and therefore understand that like a horror anime would potentially have similar things with a similar understanding, right? So maybe that would be a way to like think about that further and go less detail, more genre, but yeah. Also appreciate the like, as long as you know it's not real, son. Right? Because, and I'm joking, but like that's a real thing. If you're a parent, sometimes that's what it's about. Like, if you like this horrific ultra violence, like, do you know that violence isn't a thing you should do to people, right? One thing I like about anime is that anime sort of tends to self-select for that. Like, the anime that are for young kids usually go to young kids, and like the hyper-violent like, adult anime goes to hyper-violent adult people. Not they themselves are hyper-violent, but maybe, right? But I think that helps to be like, okay, yeah, sure, what do we do with that? I think the guy's gonna keep me now. I mean, I was planning on going 15 minutes over just to show him, but what do you do? Probably should.
I already know he's not gonna kick me.
Yeah, exactly.
I already know this.
I already know
We're gonna
this
be
stuff.
in here all night, buddies.
You're joking, but I went to a panel at a con one time and they were like, guy said we could be in here all night, so we're gonna go until people stop showing up. I'm like, that's a bold decision. Like 3 hours later, they're still doing it. Okay. I think we're waiting for it. So, any last thoughts before we get into this? Y'all can vacate if you need to here.
I think the most important thing is to just talk. Like, if your parent is shutting you down, or you know, it's just you have to kind of break through those barriers to like really talk to people and just really try to be understanding. And you know, if you are circling around, just kind of try to bring yourself back to where the conversations are.
Yeah, and I think there's something to that, right? Like, if you actually just try to talk to somebody hard enough, like sometimes that works.
Yeah.
And also if they're shutting you down, like that's their problem. Right? I appreciate everybody volunteering and stuff. I'm gonna go finish this up, and y'all can do whatever you want to do. Yes. All the time, always. Yes.
I feel that a lot too. I'm wondering if it's just
Yeah, everyone has that, especially because, hey, sometimes things happen. My advice there would be, maybe that's true, but maybe you can ask them, like, what are better ways I can communicate with you, right? Because I've had that. I have friends who are just not so good, like, they don't know any emotion words, so you have to, like, frame things for them in a way that makes sense. And maybe that's part of that. And like, maybe if you're just not pleasant to talk to, just don't talk to them. You can't always do that, but and it'll be up. Right? So we're basically out of time here. But if you have questions or anything, you want to copy the PowerPoint or anything like that, this is my personal email. You can always email me, and I will answer you back as reasonably as soon as I can. Also, presentations and stuff that I do get posted on YouTube. So if you have a need or if you can't see other stuff, you can actually follow me there. So the content over there for you to look at least to a reasonable extent. And I have business cards up here that you can take. It has my email, it has my personal website and all that good stuff. That can just give you information and anything you would reasonably need. And that would be, too, if you're interested in taking my dissertation once it comes out, it'll be on here. So I've got cards up here if y'all are interested. And I appreciate y'all being here. Thanks for your time.
It's very interesting.
Huh? Take a look. Oh yeah. It's like